Hi, I'm Captain John Iverson of West Virginia National Guard. Today you're going to see a video on the best use of PPE, which is personal protective equipment, for all hazard situations. You're also going to learn how to stop cross-contamination to the best of our abilities in order to facilitate safety and security to hospital staff, workers, and the general public. The idea behind this video is to give you best practices and knowledge for you to implement into your SOPs, standard operating procedures. We hope you enjoy this video.
There are three basic zones that we use in a contaminated environment. You'll have the hot zone, you'll have a warm zone, and a cold zone. The tricky thing about the environment we're working in right now with the coronavirus is there's no one true place that we can call contaminated and isolate everything. But when we're working in a hospital, the hot zone would be a place where all of your contaminated casualties are gathered, or if you're working in, say, a drive-through testing lane, it's going to be the lanes that are marked off where the actual patients will be coming through and where you would be working. Anybody that's working in either the warm zone or the hot zone is going to need to make sure that they're in full PPE at all times. So the warm zone is where we're controlling the contamination. We're trying to keep it confined to that one specific space. Your warm zone can vary in distance. I know in the Surf P world, where we're potentially decontaminating for chemicals or radiation, things like that, our warm zone is about 20 feet. My recommended spacing for COVID-19 would be a minimum spacing between your hot zone and your cold zone of 6 feet. Because that's the general distance they're saying we want to space ourselves out from other people where contamination is. So a minimum of 6 feet. If you can have more than that, that's fine. And then beyond the warm zone, we're going to have our cold zone. So that warm zone is a buffer between where we have known contamination and where we do not have any contamination. You're also going to want to doff your suit in the warm zone, and the line between the warm zone and cold zone will be your contamination control line. So again, as you're doffing your suit, when you come out of the suit, you're going to step across that contamination control line into the cold zone, and there should be no further contamination once we enter the cold zone. And we want to make sure that we're using good practices that preclude us from potentially carrying contamination from the hot zone into the cold zone. Now we're going to discuss some emergency procedures that you can use in the case that your PAPR body actually fails and you're not able to use it and you're not able to get a replacement for it just yet. So we can use the mask with just a filter attached. So if you need to convert it for this, you'll just simply remove the PAPR hose from the mask. Remove the rain cap from one of your filters on the PAPR. Remove the filter from the PAPR. And simply insert it into the side of the mask where your hose used to be. And your mask will work in this configuration. It will protect you. Some negatives to this are you won't have the PAPR blowing the air into your face, which is helpful as you're working in the PPE. It's less stressful on the body, but again, this is a configuration that will work in an emergency until you're able to get the pieces that you need to repair your entire PAPR system work functionally as it's designed to. Now we're going to talk about setting up some tape to use on the suit as we're donning the suit. It's going to seal up some critical areas to make sure we're not getting contamination inside of our suit. The first piece we're going to make is going to be just about a 3x3 square of your tape, and you can use the Chem tape. It's perfectly reasonable. It's nice and sticky, so it'll stick to your suit well. In a pinch, for a biological scenario, you can also use either some good masking tape, the nice wide masking tape, or duct tape. So we're going to build a V that's going to cover from the bottom of the mask down onto the chest, and it helps seal up the area around the bottom of the mask. We're going to start out with one piece of tape that's about 5 inches long, and we're going to stick it right to the table. This is going to be 5 pieces of tape that gradually get bigger as we go up. We're going to add about 1 to 2 inches to both sides as we continue moving up to the top of the V. And the top piece being the most important, we want to make sure that when we tear it off, it's generally going to be about the distance between the wearer's ears underneath the chin. And make sure that we get a good seal. And then on the very top portion of this, on one side, you want to go ahead and put a buddy tab. So when you go to take the tape off, you're not trying to dig and get the edge of the tape loose. We have a nice tab that we can get a hold of to remove the tape. For the bottom side of this, we're going to take another piece of tape, about 8 inches long, and we're going to tear it in half. And we're going to stick it together on the long edges of those two pieces of tape. And we'll lay it here. And finally, we're going to make 4 more pieces, about 8 inches long, and we're going to put a buddy tab on the end of each of these pieces. And then the rest of the taping we will be doing, we'll do directly off of the roll. So we've talked about assembling your PAPR and checking it to make sure everything's good to go. We've talked about making a taping set to assist us in donning the suit. And now we're going to go ahead and go through the process of donning your suit or putting your PPE on. So the first thing we're going to do is find our suit that we're going to wear, our skin protection. It may look like this one. You may get one that's yellow in color or white. There are several different suits out there, and any of them really are appropriate for a biohazard response. So we'll go ahead and open the suit up. And we're going to have Specialist Mullins here go ahead and put the suit on. There you go. You have a seat to put it on if you need to. One note that I do want to make is that before you go into one of these suits, before you wear a respirator, there's a medical monitoring process that has to happen. And that way they're checking to make sure all your vital signs are good, that you're in well enough health that you're able to withstand being in the suit for however long your operational period is. So do not forget to go through medical monitoring before and after you put your suit on. So he's going to get into the suit and he's going to zip it up to about the top of his chest. We're not going to zip the suit up all the way just yet. Now I'm going to go ahead and give him his chemical protective boots to make sure we unstrap. And he's just going to put these boots on right over top of the suit. There we go, Specialist Mullins. Of course, sometimes it's easier if you have something to sit on, or if you can stand up and do it, that's perfectly fine as well. Here's your other boot. We want to make sure that we strap those laces up nice and tight. It's going to help seal up around the boot. And this particular suit does have a flap that's designed to go down over top of the boot, which gives you just a little extra protection. All right, so now that Specialist Mullins is in the suit, we'll go ahead over to the taping set that we made. And we're going to start off with that very first piece that we tore off the roll, about 3 by 3 inches square. And we're going to have Special Small turn and face the camera here. This is not an essential piece that we need to put on the suit, but it's going to make your life a lot easier when it comes time to get out of the suit. We have a very small zipper tab here, and you're hot, you're tired, you have gloves on your hands, and sometimes it's hard to find and get a hold of this zipper. So we're going to take the long corner edge of the tape, and we're going to tape it directly onto the long edge of the zipper tab, like a flag. We're going to take that tape and roll it under, like so. Then we'll just keep repeating that process until we've utilized all the tape, pressing it in as we go. And then you want to make sure you squeeze it nice and tight around that metal zipper tab to make sure it sticks very well. So now when you go to doff the suit, you have a nice tab to get a hold of, and it will definitely make your life a lot easier. So at this point, I'm going to have Special Smallens grab the suit right here on the corners, and he's going to pull out and down, and that's going to help flatten out this Velcro seam. And we're just going to work the Velcro up to about right here for now, and he's good to go. The next thing we're going to talk about is protecting your hands. In an environment where we're working with biohazards specifically, and we don't necessarily have wash and rinse buckets we can continually wash and rinse with, to help with the prevention of secondary contamination or cross-contamination from a patient to yourself or to your equipment, we're going to start out with what we would call our skin contact gloves, and this is our last barrier between ourselves and contamination. So we're going to pull the sleeve up on his wrist a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and have him put the gloves on. And these gloves will remain on you the entire operational period that you're working in the hot zone, and they will be the last thing that will come off of you as you are doffing your suit. Again, this gives you just a little added extra layer of protection as you're working and as you're doffing the suit. All right, so from here, I'm going to make sure that the wrist of the glove is all the way out. Get as much protection up onto his wrist as we can. And I'm going to pull the sleeve of the suit down close to where his thumb knuckle meets his wrist. We're going to take the roll of tape, and we're going to pull off a nice long section. We don't want to type this really tight around the wrists, because we want to be able to remove this layer of glove and the suit at the same time if possible, and that's going to protect the hand from any possible contamination. So we're going to lay the tape on the suit, and we're going to go a couple times around the wrist and the hand, and we're going to tear it off on the inside of his wrist. So when it comes time to take the tape off, he knows exactly where to look for the edge. It's going to be right here at his wrist, and then I'll take that tape and press it in against this glove. Press it into the suit, and it should be loose enough, again, that when he doffs the suit, he should be able to pull his hand out of the glove, and the glove will remain attached to the suit. We'll repeat the process for his right hand, again making sure that that glove is pulled all the way down his arm as far as we can go, and then the suit cuff is going to go over top of the glove. Press the tape in, make sure it sticks, we have a good seal. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and have Special Smallens here put on 2 more layers of glove over the skin contact gloves. The purpose of this is, once you've touched a contaminated patient or a piece of equipment that's contaminated, we don't want to transfer that contamination to another person or another piece of equipment. So instead of having to constantly wash our hands, we're going to stack several layers of gloves on top of the skin contact glove. So all you have to do when you have contamination on your hands is peel off the top layer, and now you have another clean layer underneath. Obviously, once you get down to your last layer of gloves before you get to the skin contact gloves, you would go ahead and put another several sets on top of that and just keep repeating that process until you're finished with your operational period. And we're going to want to tuck or wrap that outside layer of your operational gloves over top of your tape so that the edge of it will be easy to get to. And you can certainly stack as many layers of gloves as you want to, as long as you don't get to the point to where you lose complete manual dexterity or your sense of touch if you need to use that for whatever job you're doing. So we finished putting Specialist Mullen's layered gloves on, and we're going to go ahead and put his papper around his waist, put the mask on and the hood over top of that. As you can see, this is kind of a precarious procedure, and you definitely want to make sure that you have someone else assisting you as you're donning your PPE. Hold on to this buckle for me. I'm going to hand the other one to you around the side. Go ahead and clip that in place. And as I said in the previous video, you want to make sure that your belt isn't super tight to where it's cutting into your body, but you do want to make sure that it's tight enough that your papper is going to sit firmly against your body. So now, generally you want to make sure that you put the hose underneath your arm on the same side of your mask, or same side of your body that your hose attaches to your mask. So now Specialist Mullins is going to go ahead and put the mask on. I'll go ahead and turn his papper on to make sure he has some airflow. Now we want to pay special attention when we're putting the mask on that we're doing it correctly. A big mistake that a lot of people will make is when they put the mask on, they tighten up the top strap up here first and then they work their way down, and that's the reverse order the way we want to do it. I'm going to have Specialist Mullins turn around here for a second. You can see on the back of the harness here there's a triangle and a strap right here. This is called the nape pad, and it's designed to go down to the nape of your neck. And I'm going to put my hand, and once I get that staged where I want it, I'm going to hold it with my hand, and I'm going to start with the bottom straps, and I'm going to tighten them down. I don't want to crank it down so much that it's going to be extremely uncomfortable for him, and if you tighten him down too tight, it can actually cause your mask to not seal correctly. So we just want it nice and snug against his head, and then finally I can tighten that top one down a little bit if I need to. So now if we look at the straps, they're pulling straight back against his face. They're not at an angle. If they're at an angle, a sharp angle on the side of your head, it's actually going to push tension against the bottom of your chin, and it's going to leave a little gap in the top of your mask, and it won't seal correctly. With the straps pulling straight back, it's going to pull the mask straight against your face, and you're going to get a correct seal. So now that we have his mask applied, we can go ahead and put the hood over his head, and he's going to go ahead and turn and face the camera again. Now I'm going to have him look up as high as he can. He's going to look up at the ceiling, and I'm going to finish zipping his zipper all the way up. And then we'll go ahead and finish closing that Velcro around the neck. Seal that up as well as we can, and then we'll get the hood set into place. So we can see as he looks up, there's a small gap between the chin and the suit, and we're trying to get total skin protection. So what we're going to do is move over to the table to this V that we built previously. I'm going to start at the bottom and just peel that off of the table. And I'm going to flip it over with the sticky side facing up. I'm going to get our other two pieces that we stuck together on the long edge. And I'm going to go to the top of the V where the very first seam is. I'm going to take this with the shiny side facing away from me, and I'm going to tape it to the inside of the V. This is going to prevent the sticky part of the tape sticking to his throat and being uncomfortable for the worker. I do want to make sure that I have plenty of adhesive all the way around this piece so that it will seal when we attach it. I'm going to have Specialist Mullins turn a little bit towards me. I'm going to once again have him look up as high as he possibly can. I want you to look at the ceiling. I'm going to reach through the hose and grab one corner of the V and pull it into place. I'm going to pinch it together and fold the top edge of it back. And I'm going to tape that directly to the bottom of his mask, and I'm going to push these tabs back towards the ears. I'll then work my way under the mask and make sure that the tape is sealing directly to the mask. And then I can work my way down the throat to make sure that it's sealing to the suit. Now he can look down, and what we've created by having him look up is some extra space in that tape, so that as he moves his head, it's not going to break the tape loose, and it's not going to break the seal on his mask. So now we're going to go ahead and finish sealing up the rest of the way around the mask so we have really good protection around the face. And that's where these 4 pieces that we made earlier are going to come into play. I always start on the person's left side, so we'll have him turn face left. And I'm going to go straight up and down with this piece of tape, and I'm going to have the buddy tab facing down. I'm going to pull a little bit of the suit back so that I can slide the tape back in behind this little shelf that's on the visor of the mask, and I'll make sure I'm getting suit and mask as I tape. So this one's going straight up and down. The next piece is going to go halfway across the top of his visor, so he's going to face towards the camera here so you guys can see what we're doing. We'll look down just a little bit. You can see we have suit and then rubber part of the mask up here. This next piece is going to go across, and the buddy tab is going to face to the left. They're all going to go in the same direction. I want to make sure that I'm overlapping the adhesive part of the tape over the other piece of tape. I'm going to make sure it seals to the mask and to the suit. I'll do the other half of the mask the same way. Again, the buddy tab is going to face to his left. And then the final piece is going to go straight up and down on his right side, and the buddy tab is going to be facing up. Again, all the buddy tabs go in the same direction. This is going to assist us later when we're doffing the suit. And now we have completely donned Specialist Mullen's PPE, and he's in full level C with the PAPR, suit, gloves, and boots, and he's taped in place. So Specialist Mullins has been working in the hot zone. His operational period has ended, and now it's time for him to go through the doffing procedures and decontamination. So the first thing I'm going to do as he approaches my line, and I have a line here on the floor which represents our contamination control line. And of course, we always want to make sure that we're paying attention to those control lines so that we're not, again, potentially bringing contamination from the hot zone into the cold zone. So we're going to have a contamination control line that he's not going to cross until he is out of his personal protective equipment. The first thing I'm going to do is start down at his feet. I'm going to pull up the protective cover, and I'm going to unbutton his boots. Now I want to pay special attention while I'm doing this that I am not going to put my knee on the ground, because then I could potentially contaminate my suit, and I could also cause a breach or a rip in my suit, and both of those are some bad situations that we don't want to get into. Also note that if I were doffing him and he's in his personal protective equipment, I would be in the same equipment that he's wearing, but for demonstration purposes today I am not. So he's going to give me the other foot, and I'm going to go ahead and unstrap it. I'm going to open up the shaft of the boot a little bit to make sure we have plenty of room. Now, the next step, I'm going to go ahead and remove his PAPR. And there's several ways you can do this. If you have some type of a coat hanger that you can hang the belt on, that works very well. For today's demonstration purposes, we're going to use this stool, and we're just going to lay his PAPR down, and we're going to leave it on while he's wearing it to make sure he's still getting air. So at this point, I'm going to have him face me. I'm going to do everything in the front that I can do first, and then I'll go around and have his back facing to me and do everything I need to do from the back. So at this point, I'm going to find that tab. I'll know exactly where it is because I taped him, and we tape everybody the same way. And I'm going to start working the tape off around the mask. And then we're going to find the tab that was on the V that we built, and we'll just continue removing that tape. A big thing we want to pay attention to is any of this contaminated waste that we have, we want to make sure we throw it away in the container that is labeled hazardous waste. One of the biggest ways that we can avoid cross-contamination is our waste that we're disposing of needs to be done so appropriately. We want to make sure that we're not getting any contaminated stuff crossing that contamination control line. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the seam of the Velcro on the zipper. I'm going to take 2 fingers and run it straight down the Velcro, open the suit up, and I'm going to zip him all the way down. Now he's going to step up and put his toes against our contamination control line. At this point, I'm going to make a fist and I'm going to put it on the back of his head. I'm going to take my other hand, I'm going to make sure that I do not touch the inside of his suit. I'm only going to touch the outside. I'm going to get the top of the hood, I'm going to pull it back off of his head, and then I'm going to turn to the side so they can see here. I'm going to punch through the suit. So that way, if any part of the suit touches him, it's only going to be the inside and not the outside of the suit. All right, go ahead and turn it face front again. I'm then going to grab the corners of the shoulders of his suit. I'm going to go up and then pull down to the point that the suit breaks the plane of his shoulders. Again, I'm only going to touch the outside of his suit. At this point, he's going to spread his feet a little bit and he's going to go into what we would call a ski jumper position. He's going to bend forward and put his hands behind his back. I'm going to start working the gloves off of his hands. And if they're too difficult to get off, that's fine, because we do have an extra layer of protection on his hands, the gloves that are still there. So if I can't get that tape off, I'm not going to, or get the glove off, I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time trying to loosen that glove up and get it off his hand. I'm just going to go ahead and remove the tape. And since his hands are still protected with that last layer of gloves, I can then grab the sleeves of the suit and I'm going to pull it down off of his arms. Now, again, only touching the outside of the suit, I'm going to pull the suit down. And now that his hands are free, he is going to touch the inside of his suit and he's going to push the suit down around his ankles as far as he can go. The farther down you can push it over the boots, the better. All right, good job. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the leg opposite of the side that his papper is on. I'm going to step on the back of the boot. There's a little tab on the back of the boot that allows you to do this. And I'm going to tell him he's going to step out with his right leg and do a quarter turn. If you need to touch the inside of your suit to help yourself out, you can. He's going to do a quarter turn. I'll step on the other boot and he'll step out with that foot and he's going to turn and face me. He's going to keep his mask over the contamination control line with his body in the cold zone. I'm going to hold the chin cup on the bottom of his mask and push against his face just a little bit to make sure he keeps a seal. He's going to reach up and he's going to loosen the 2 bottom straps of his mask with his fingers. If I need to help him, I can right here. Both hands, get the other side as well. So once he gets those loose enough and he's happy with it, he's going to signal that he's good to go by dropping his hands. I'm going to count to 3, and on 3, he's going to duck down and back away. 1, 2, 3. So the mask stays with me in the hot zone, and the person that's working is now in the cold zone. And the last thing he's going to do is carefully strip off that last layer of gloves and throw them in the trash. And then I'm going to clean up my work area by throwing away the disposable suit in the appropriately labeled container. And then at this point, anything that can be decontaminated, such as the boots and the PAPR system, are going to go into a technical decontamination, get them cleaned off and ready for the next operational period. So as we get the box, we're going to take a look at it and go ahead and open it up and see what items we have inside. The first thing we see inside of the case is a waistband carrying case. For the most part, you probably won't be using this, but it can be used to put around your waist, put the PAPR mask inside of it. Normally this would be used in an environment which we would call level D, where there's no known threat, but there's a potential for it, and we would just store our mask with one canister, filter canister inside of this, just in case we would have to mask up for an emergency. So during normal operations, when you're in a known contaminated environment and you're actually using the PAPR blower box itself, you're not going to be using this. So we'll set that to the side. And I will say from the start, we'll try to tell you everything we can in this video, but if you have any questions, you can always refer to the owner's manual, which is inside of the box. It has all the technical information as far as changing and replacing filters, and just general maintenance questions that you might have can be covered inside of the equipment manual. So as we dig into the box, first thing we see here is the PAPR mask itself. As we take it out of the box, we want to go ahead and inspect it to make sure there's nothing wrong with it. It's not been sitting in a not very well climate controlled environment to where it's going to have any mildew or any cracks or tears on the rubber. So we're going to inspect the face blank and make sure it's nice and clean, no cracks in there. We're going to inspect the outside of the mask to make sure that the rubber looks like it's all in good condition. We're going to go ahead and flip it over to where we're looking at the chin portion of the mask, and there's a little tab on this outlet cover right here. We're going to pull that open and look inside here. There's a little outlet valve. It's yellow and it has a little knob on the inside of it, and we're just going to check that to make sure that there's no cracks or tears inside of that. Make sure there's no debris that's gotten inside there that could cause it to not seal, and make sure that it can just spin freely inside of that hole. Once we've inspected that, we can go ahead and put the cover back on. Next, we're going to check the head harness itself. Again, we want to make sure there's no cracks or splits or tears or any dry rotting on this harness. We make sure it's in good working order. One of the first things I would do is go ahead and loosen all the straps, and that's going to help us out later when we go to don the mask and put on the rest of our PPE. So next, we're going to take a look at the inside of the mask. We have our chin cup that's inside of here that has two inlet valves, little rubber pieces right here. We want to look at those and make sure that they're nice and pliable, that they're not ripped or torn. Make sure there's no debris that's in there that would cause it not to seal. Make sure there's no mildew or mold or anything inside the chin cup. And if you have a drink tube in there, you would want to make sure that it's a nice clean drink tube that you're able to use if you do in fact have a Camelback that will attach to this mask. So once we've taken a look at the mask and we go to set it aside, and one note I would add to this is we always want to make sure we store the mask with the harness like this in this configuration. We never want to stretch the harness around the front of the mask to where when it's sitting in storage it's pulling on the sides of the mask. That can cause it to get a memory, as we say, and it won't seal correctly on your face. So always store it with the harness just hanging loose in the back or tucked into the inside of the mask. So we'll set that to the side for the moment. The next thing we see in the box is our PAPR hose. It's going to have some green caps on it if it's a new PAPR that you've received. So we can just take those green caps and take them off and store those inside of the box. So again, like the outside of the mask, this is made of rubber and plastic. So we want to inspect it to make sure it's in good working order. There's no rips or cuts or tears. Make sure there's no mildew or anything on it, and make sure that all the plastic, it looks like it's in good condition and that there's nothing that would cause it to have a leak or to fail during your operational period. It does have a 90-degree angle on one side, and it has a straight end on the other side. That'll come into play here in just a little bit. Next thing, we're going to actually take out the PAPR fan, or the box that holds the fans, and also will hold your filters and the battery. Again, we can take off the green caps. There's as we go to assemble this, those will need to be taken off. So this piece of equipment is made out of plastic, so same process that we've done with everything else. We want to inspect it to make sure there's no cracks, no mildew, no visible damage to this piece of equipment. The next thing we would do is we'll set that down and we'll go ahead and get our filters ready. We want to make sure that we start out with some nice, clean, fresh filters, make sure that they're not expired. And if they are, and you're not sure whether they're usable or not, call the manufacturer is always our recommendation to make sure that the filters that you're issued and the filters that you're using are going to be adequate to protect you against whatever threat that you're working around. So as we open our filters, they do have a plastic cap on the threads on the back of the filter, and then there should be an open hole in the front of it. Again, we're just going to inspect that to make sure there's no damage to it, no mildew or anything like that. So we can take our first filter and screw it into one of the two holes in the front of the PAPR fan box. And then of course we'll just repeat the process for the second one. If you open the bag and it does start to make a little hissing sound, that's okay. These are vacuum sealed, and sometimes the packaging will close up against the hole in the front of the filter. It creates a vacuum in there, so when you open up the packaging, it may be releasing some of that air. So no need to worry about the sound, that's normal. So we can go ahead and attach our next filter to our PAPR. So the next thing we're going to look for is our battery. Inside the box you should have a black rechargeable battery, as well as a charger that will plug directly into your wall outlet. You want to make sure before you start using the PAPR that you've given it several hours to charge to make sure it is fully charged. It does have a charging port on the end of the battery, and you would simply take the charger, plug it into the battery, and when the charger turns on, and you can find this in the instruction manual, it will have an orange light when it's charging, and then the light will turn green once the battery is fully charged. Set that to the side. Now, when you're selecting the batteries, there's one thing that you have to pay attention to on your PAPR. It has two caps for the battery compartment cover. Generally, the one that comes on the PAPR is black. And there are two different types of batteries that you can use. There are rechargeable and non-rechargeable batteries. The black batteries are the rechargeable battery, and there's another battery that would come in a military or olive green color, and those are non-rechargeable. If you're using the green battery, you would use the black cap. And when you're using the rechargeable battery, you're going to use the green cap that will also come in the box. When you're ready to insert your battery, make sure your papper is turned off, and you're going to put the shiny end of the battery into the battery compartment. And then we'll take our green cap and screw that down nice and tight. Make sure it gets a good seal. And if you're only using one type of battery, it would be fine to go ahead and remove the ring clip for the black cover, put it in your box, and just take the green cover and clip it onto the papper so that you don't have the extra piece flopping around while you're working. The next thing we're going to look at inside the box is our confidence test tube. It's a clear tube that looks like this. It has a little red ball on the inside, and there's a line about 3/4 of the way up with a red shaped U on top of the line. And what we're going to do is place this tester into the hole on the top of the papper body. We'll turn the papper on, and the fan should start working, and what we're looking for is that the red ball rises to the top of the tube, or at least above that red line. If you do this test and the ball doesn't go up to the point that says that it's good to go, that means there's the possibility of a few problems you may have. One is your filters may be clogged up and they're not letting enough airflow through. If that's the case, we can replace the filters. It could mean that the fans inside the papper are not working correctly, or it could mean that your battery is not fully charged. For troubleshooting this issue, the first thing that I would do is see if I know someone else that has a papper battery that is been tested and is completely charged. Use it in your papper, and then if the ball rises all the way, that you know that you need to charge your battery a little bit more. If not, then you could replace it with known good filters. If that fixes the problem, we're good to go. And then if it doesn't, that is going to narrow it down to the fact that maybe the fans inside the box are not working correctly. So once we've got this completely assembled, we've tested our battery, we're ready to go to the belt. It's going to come wrapped up like this with a rubber band. So we're going to take the belt and we're going to flip the papper over so that we can see the little clips that are built into the side of it. We want to orient our belt so that the clip is oriented correctly, and we're going to feed the strap through this back bracket on the papper body. Until we have it about centered, and then feed it through the other side. And then you can take the clip and thread your other side of the belt through there. And of course you can adjust either side of the belt to fit your waist. You want it to fit snug, not too tight, but you also don't want it to be very loose because the papper is going to flop around on your back and it'll be uncomfortable. So just make sure it's set to the correct settings for yourself. If you have a long flap that's sticking out on the open end of the belt, the best thing to do would be take a piece of tape and just tape it down to where it's not flapping around as you're trying to work. Another option you have that will come inside of your papper, especially if it's raining outside or if you're working in a wet environment doing a wet decon inside of the shower area, we have what's called a rain cap. And your rain cap will look like this. This is the back and this is the front. These will clip over top of the little tab that's on the back of your filter, and it will just simply click into place. You want to make sure when you install these that the open portion of the rain cap is facing down. Otherwise, it's going to end up collecting water and cause a bigger problem than we had in the first place. So the next thing we're ready to do is to go ahead and put the mask and the papper together. So we'll take our hose and we're going to take the straight end of the hose and attach it to the top of the papper. You don't want to crank it down super tight to where you take a risk of breaking the plastic, but you do want to get it snug enough to make sure that you have a good seal. And then we'll take the 90-degree angle end of the hose, and on the left side of the mask you'll see an open hole there with the inlet valve showing. We'll take that and screw the other end of the hose into the mask. And now you have a fully inspected and assembled papper unit. So we talked earlier about doffing the suit and the fact that when we're doing so, we want to use a buddy system. One person is going to help another person doff their suit. They'll be in the same level of PPE that the other person was wearing, working in that warm zone. The question can come up though, what do I do if I'm the very last person that's coming out of a suit and I have no one to help me? One of the biggest things that you can do to help yourself out with that is to go ahead and conduct a technical decontamination on your suit, on your equipment before you come out of it. So if we have a solution of bleach and water or peroxide and water or whatever the recommended decontamination solution is, before that last person before you exits the warm zone, you would have them spray your suit down with a decontamination solution to make sure that we're trying to kill any contaminant that may be on your suit. And then you come to the point to where you're going to have to doff the suit yourself. So you would want to repeat the same process that we did as we're doffing someone else, small modifications, and I would make sure that the person that's doing this has a really good grasp of what they're doing and why, every step of the way, and then make sure that the last thing that they do is after they've taken the suit off and they've stepped across that contamination control line, they've removed their mask and left it in the warm zone, that the last thing that happens is they still have that layer of gloves on, and they're going to strip those gloves off and throw them away, and they're going to walk away into the cold zone, and eventually there'll be another crew that will come in and help clean up that warm zone and decontaminate everything. All right, so we've worked in the hot zone, we've doffed our equipment, and we stepped into the cold zone. But the next question is, what do we do with our equipment that needs to be reused that stayed in the warm zone when we doffed? Well, the answer to that is we're going to have to perform some form of decontamination. Some parts of your papper system can be dunked in water, some parts cannot. A couple of the pieces that can are your mask. So we'll go ahead and remove the mask from the hose. We'll also remove the hose from the papper box. And when we're doing this, our recommendation is to follow the CDC guidelines for whatever solution you're going to use to decontaminate with. One of them is a mixture of bleach and water, and some of the recommendations are that we're going to soak the equipment for at least 20 seconds before we move it into the rinse area. And of course, every few of these that we do, we're going to want to change out our wash and rinse solution so that we don't have any contaminant that's lingering in there and we're just contaminating other equipment. So I can go ahead and take my mask and my hose and put it in our wash solution, let that soak. The next thing we're going to do is take the filters off of the papper. So we'll remove those, take the rain caps off of them, set them down on our table here. And we cannot dunk this because it has electrical components in it and there's holes and everything where water could get into it. So what we're going to want to do is use a disinfecting wipe. Feel free to use as many as you need. And you're going to wipe every surface that you can possibly get to on the papper. Just wipe it off and get it nice and clean. Give that solution a chance to do its job. Don't forget to flip it over. Get up underneath of the belt, all around the sides. Make sure you do the belt as well. We're not going to forget any part of this equipment. Anywhere that contaminant could have been trapped, we need to go ahead and make sure that we wipe that off. Of course, as we're doing this, we're going to be working in the warm zone, and if we're working in the warm zone, we're going to make sure that we're in the correct level of PPE to include our suit, boots, gloves, and the same respirator that everybody else on the footprint is using. In this case, it would be a PAPR. We can go ahead and take our filter canister. If your leadership has decided you're going to reuse the canisters, you want to make sure that you wipe them off really well. Get every surface area that you can. And you would also want to go ahead and clean those rain caps off too if you did use them. If not, then you don't have to worry about it. We've also got our boots here that we need to get cleaned off. I would suggest having a bucket with a scrub brush. You can dip the boots in the solution and then take your brush and scrub the boots. And you would want to scrub down so that anything that comes off of the boots as far as liquid goes is going to go back into the bucket. So you would scrub your boots off really well, leave some of the solution on there and let it set. Again, after that 20 seconds or however long it takes you to do whatever else you're doing, you can let whatever is soaking soak. When you're finished with that, you take it out, put it in your rinse solution. You would rinse off the boots, let it rinse for 20 seconds to a minute, take it out, and then you want to have a rack where you can hang this equipment up and let it air dry before you reuse it. Of course, once everything has been decontaminated, it's gone through the weight process, we'll go ahead and reassemble everything and have it ready to go for the next operational period. So you've come out of the hot zone, you've doffed your suit, but you're not quite finished yet. You want to remember, every time you come out of that suit and you've been operating in the hot zone, you need to go get medical monitored. They're going to check your vital signs, check your weight, check your pulse, things like that to make sure that you don't have any extreme physical stress. And speaking of stress, while we are working in this PPE, it does cause additional stress on our bodies. It's 100% humidity inside that suit. You're going to be hot. You're going to be sweating. So you have to remember, once you've finished your medical monitoring, make sure that you're drinking some water, even drink some Gatorade, make sure you're replenishing your electrolytes inside your body, and make sure you get something to eat. And also, before you get into the suit, you might want to make sure you're avoiding caffeinated products as much as you possibly can. Don't drink alcohol the night before. Make sure that you're hydrating your body so that you can prepare yourself to be able to go into a strenuous environment of wearing this personal protective equipment. Just make sure you're taking care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, you will not be able to take care of other people.